Hello, everyone. My name is AJ, and today I will be taking an in depth look at GTA 5. Everyone knows that acronym Grand Theft Auto. Gamer or not, you just know it. Ever since the very first GTA game came out, that franchise became a symbol of gaming. Everyone who played it remembers that top down view, the funny looking cars, ridiculous missions, and weapons that you could find and use freely. It was a story of crime, but for gamers of the time, it was more of a freedom simulator. Going out into an open city and doing anything you wanted was a revolutionary idea, and that became the core of the series. With GTA 3 franchise entered the 3D era, world became even more expansive with even more things to do. Then came Vice City, an upgrade of sorts to GTA 3's formula. San Andreas was after that. World kept on growing, things kept on improving. GTA 4 was a step back. It was a more realistic and gritty look at the formula that removed a lot of very enjoyable game mechanics. And now we have GTA 5, bigger than ever, prettier than ever. But is it better than ever? The biggest change was the addition of two more playable characters that you could switch at any time. And that change paid back big time in the character development department. All three characters have very distinct personalities, and the interactions between them emphasize that. Michael is a retired criminal longing for the days of his past glory. Franklin is a low level thug trying to claw his way out of poverty by doing odd jobs here and there. And Trevor is a psychopath with a very strong affinity to violence. Watching these characters grow and develop, especially as a trio of unlikely friends, is rather enjoyable. They get tangled in some shady dealings, they rob a few places, they fight bad guys, good guys, they fight each other, and all of that is handled with utmost consistency. Their character traits don't succumb to convenience or bad writing. They talk, act, and react as their character entails. And that kind of consistency is very refreshing to see. Secondary characters, on the other hand, were handled a bit more clumsily, especially the antagonists. The very first antagonist is Martin Madrazo, a cartel boss that Michael accidentally pisses off. He is introduced as a serious criminal element of the city. I mean, Michael gets back into the business of stealing just to pay that guy off, yet he's barely a presence in the game. He returns for a couple more missions later in the game, but they're completely inconsequential. He doesn't interact with any other criminal elements, he's never mentioned by other characters, he has no real or lasting effect on characters or the world. Not to mention how easily this feared cartel boss is bullied into submission by Trevor. He's really a non-entity in this game. Then there are dummy characters who are not only barely in the game, but are artificially made to seem more important than they really are. One of these characters is Stretch, a veteran gangster that Franklin knows. By the end of the game, he becomes one of the main antagonists you have to kill. Yet he's in like two mission stops, and two very irrelevant missions at that. You barely see him, not to mention experience him. So how the hell does he become one of the main antagonists? He's never a challenge, not even a threat, certainly not directly. It would have been fine if he was just a part of a side quest, just a few missions where you deal with a gang, but it's not. He becomes one of the main villains based entirely on a few missions that are stretched out throughout the game. Wei Cheng is the same way. He's the leader of Triad, supposedly one of the biggest factions in the game, and having almost no presence at all. Just like Stretch, Triads get like 3 or 4 mission stops, where only one has any substance or weight to it. And even that mission makes little sense. Of course, both Triads and Wei Chang are barely mentioned or have any effect on the world. They don't have any presence, just like Cartel or the gangs, and that's because the main villain here is the FBI. For some stupid reason, FBI gets the most attention in terms of missions and development. Actually, overwhelming majority of missions will be related to FBI and the dealings of a few corrupt agents. It all starts with an agent named Dave Norton. He's the guy who made a deal with Michael 10 years ago. Michael would give up his team in exchange for a new identity and new life. Treason, pretty much. The deal was not entirely legal, So when Norton's boss finds out about it, he uses this opportunity to coerce Michael, Franklin, and Trevor into working for the FBI. See, this is as much cohesion as you will get when it comes to FBI. The rest makes little to no sense. And that's because the omnipotence of FBI agents was used more as an excuse to do silly and ridiculous things in game than use them as well developed characters with interesting motivation and reasoning. You barely get to know them. Their personalities boil down to a single, often exaggerated behavioral pattern. They get no development or interesting dialogue. Their motivation is simplistic at best, and you just don't care about them. By the end of the game, I did not even see them as characters. They just became mission dispensaries with a permission to go on another crazy journey full of shooting, chases, explosions, and mayhem. And there are some fun missions, like stealing a supposed biological weapon or raiding FBI headquarters. The only problem is motivation. Things don't get explained well when it comes to FBI missions. You're just told to do something with or else being your only motivation. And that applies to so many missions, it's not even funny. Those FBI agents even repeat it over and over that if you don't do everything they tell you, then everyone is fucked. Rockstar really cut corners with writing here. Not only did they fail to turn FBI into a compelling plot device with a few complex characters, but they could not even bother giving good reasons for doing things. It was either do this or you're going to prison, or do this or we'll get caught. That's it. No substantial conflict between characters, no dissent or branching decisions, and certainly no impact on anything. Your life in that world doesn't change one bit. And that applies to all missions, actually. Every single thing that happens is contained within scripted events and dialogue. The moment mission is over, you're free to do whatever you want with no consequences. You're not really persecuted by anyone. Quite early on, you piss off a security firm called Mayweather. Do they come for you outside missions? Do they raid your businesses or your home? Do they try to ambush you and beat the answers out of you? No, not at all. During missions, these guys come at you in legions. But the second mission is over, it's like none of that even happened. World does not change in the slightest. It's like free roaming mode and missions are two separate games. The world needs to be persistent, otherwise, nothing you do within missions matters. And that's very important for an open world game. If not mechanically, then at least narratively. It's always fun to observe how the world changes based on your actions, even if it changes in a negative way. How some parties grow stronger while others wither away. Some become rich, others go bankrupt. Just watching the power dynamic fluctuate is amazing. That's why staying within the confines of a criminal world instead of involving FBI would have been really beneficial for GTA 5. See, no single criminal element is sufficiently developed in this game. Cartels, bikers, gangs, triads. From narrative point of view, all of these groups are but distractions or side quests you do when you're bored. Why not make them more involved? The game is all about heists, right? Then make heists more involving as well. Your part in every heist ends when you steal something and get away with it. And my question is why? Let's take the very first heist as an example. You steal a lot of jewels, give them to Lester, and that's it. Sometime later, you get the money for them, and the deal is done. But wouldn't it have been much more interesting if you did the selling as well? Looking for the best buyer, negotiating maybe, try to force your buyer's hand by doing a side mission or two. Then you sell them to, for example, triads. And let's say cartels get pissed off at you for it. They mess up your home, try to affect your businesses. You naturally retaliate, ask triads for help while you plan other heists. Speaking of that, why isn't planning more involving? When the sequence of heists mission starts, everything is already laid out. Game has done all the planning for you. You just follow the instructions. Why not pass some of that to the player? Why don't you, as a player, for example, follow someone? There is in game internet. Let's say you want to rob the jewelry store, right? You look up who works in it, their address, then you follow them. Steal their ID card, maybe, or threaten them, or involve them in a more substantial manner. You can drive around the area and set the escape route. Leave several getaway cars. There's a ton of options. But the key here is leaving some of those bigger decisions to the player. How fun is it to play your own heists, right? Imagine how dynamic the world would have been if it actually revolved around heists and the criminal underground. Maybe the place you robbed belonged to some criminal organization and now they are after you. Maybe you robbed an ammunition store and by selling guns to a particular group, you make them stronger. You don't even have to take part in these power struggles. You can just manipulate them in the way you see fit. And you don't have to just steal jewels and gold, steal chemicals for cartels to make drugs, steal supercars for the triads, kidnap famous people for the bikers. And all of it has to be planned by you and also executed by you. Instead, we are focused on FBI shenanigans. Sure, they have a few fun and crazy missions, but that's it. Nothing lasting, nothing meaningful. Later on in a game, some rich guy is introduced who somehow becomes the main villain. A couple of other secondary characters that are in no way interesting. I mean, it's just such a waste. I wish they just focused on the main theme of the game and done a lot more interesting things with it. What about mechanics then? Core mechanics are still solid. Driving, stealing cars, shooting cops, exploring the world, etc. But that's where my compliments end. This time around, your characters have skills stamina, shooting, driving, and so on. And these skills are almost redundant. Not once have I felt any difference. Driving skill is supposed to improve car handling, but I had no trouble driving, even on characters with low driving skill. Never had trouble headshotting enemies with Franklin, who has low shooting skill. Barely ever needed stealth, and it did not even matter how low it was. You can stealth kill without a problem. Never bothered with the strength or lung capacity or even stamina. I have no idea why these skills are there, especially considering how quickly you can level them up. They do tie into special abilities somewhat. Each character has an activatable ability based on their proficiency. Franklin can slow down time when he's driving, Michael can slow down time when he's shooting, and Trevor doubles his damage when the ability is active. Calling them abilities, of course, is an understatement. They're more like superpowers. But I did not mind seeing how useful they were. Shooting is good. Nothing innovative there. A good collection of weapons, everything from handguns to SMGs, assault rifles, sniper rifles, and rocket launchers. They all handle well and just do their job. Can even be modified. What I despised with passion, however, was that damn weapon wheel. It's a consequence of having this game released on consoles first. So I just stuck to hotkeys. Driving is still arcadey. Better with a controller, of course, but pretty good with keyboard as well. Even in the fastest car going at the fastest speed, it doesn't really feel fast. Vehicles are now heavily modifiable. You can even buy some sweet looking rides. And that's another big problem I had with this game: money. Games just can't do a decent economy, especially in single player games. You can spend money in a variety of things: weapons, clothing, haircuts, tattoos, and eventually property. And spending money is always fun, especially on fun things. The problem is, however, that there are no reliable ways of making money. See, in previous installments, you were getting a bulk of your money from missions. Pretty much every mission rewarded you with cash. That's not the case in GTA 5. It's quite the contrary. Most missions don't give you any money, and that is freaking annoying. So there have to be some alternatives, right? Yes, there are. The most obvious one is stock exchange. Sounds fun? Well, it isn't, because that thing is unreliable and you can easily lose the little money you have. That's if you play by the rules, of course. If you don't mind exploiting the system, there are many ways to do so. So you go from struggling to make money to breaking the economy altogether. GTA 5 is all about heists, right? Maybe that's how you make money. Well, yeah, but there are only three heists that actually pay you any decent money, with a third one being at the very end of the game. So don't rely on that. There are heists that don't pay you at all, so enjoy those. You can buy businesses, that certainly must be worthwhile, right? Oh, no, no, no. That's one of the money making aspects that angered me the most. For starters, buying businesses is expensive throughout the game, and the payout is minuscule. For example, you need $200,000 to buy Downtown Cab. That's one of the cheapest properties. And the payout is $2,000. That's not the worst part, though. The worst part is that these payments are weekly. So you spend $200,000 on a property to then get measly $2,000 a week. It's nothing. Restock and ammo can cost 5 times that. Not to mention buying more expensive properties like a golf course that costs 150 million. You can't afford that even with the very last job, which gets you around 30 million. Imagine how much time has to pass until you can save 150 million. It's just a ridiculous system, insulting even. I never had monetary issues in Vice City or San Andreas or even GTA 4. In 5, on the other hand, I never had enough for anything I wanted, and that just pissed me off throughout the game. Of course, it being GTA, you can rob places like gas stations or shops, but that's not worth it. You get a couple $100 per robbery, and that's nothing. You can try hunting some security vans down, but they're just a pain in the ass. They yield a few $1,000 tops, and the circumstances under which they respawn are so vague and inconsistent that they become a hassle quite quickly. I realize that creating a viable economy with any depth in a game is quite complicated, but there have to be some basic rules developers could follow. For example, balancing out the work you put into something with the reward you get for that work. There's nothing more frustrating than putting a ton of effort into something and then get nothing in return. Like the super weapon mission in GTA 5. You do a ton of preparations and then the heist itself, and in the end, come out with nothing. That's a terrible feeling. Or what about creating several ways to make money, all equally viable? Stock exchange is all fine and dandy, but besides that, there is no other way to make a decent amount of money on a regular basis. And you do need quite a bit of money if you want all the nice stuff. Or what about making businesses a much more developed mechanic? I hated how businesses work in GTA 5. You just buy a property and forget about it. Sure, they sometimes call you with various chores and favors to do, but those missions are neither fun nor matter in any way. Why couldn't I develop my business? Start from the ground level, like buying property, then turning it into a shop or a restaurant or a bloody drug manufacturing factory if I wanted to, then expand it, upgrade it, hire guards and personnel, interact with other businesses. There are a ton of possibilities to explore, and yet all of them were ignored. Collectibles is probably the worst part of this game. I was happy to see GTA indulging the OCD nature of some gamers. I'm somewhat OCD myself, just not to the point where I need to finish every game to 100%. And if 100% completion is something you enjoy, you will have to do a ton of stupid, uninteresting, contrived, boring, uninventive, and most importantly, unrewarding tasks. So here's my first question regarding collectibles. Why the fuck are they not marked on the map? Tomb Raider, Far Cry, Watch Dogs, Shadow of Mordor, etc. None of these games hide their collectibles. They are either available to collect right away by following the map, or players are given the opportunity to reveal them in one way or another. Not only is there no practical reason to hide these collectibles, but data miners will find out their locations 10 minutes after release. All it does is inconvenience those players who actually want to collect them. That's it. Second major point is how unrewarding collecting is. So, with games like Shadow of Mordor or Far Cry, you get rewarded for finding each individual piece. It's either experience or some monetary reward. And more often than not, when you finish collecting everything in a particular set, you get a big reward. That's not the case in GTA 5. What GTA 5 does is shows you the middle finger and says, fuck you, when you finish collecting anything. I remember in previous installments, collectibles would increase your health or let you sprint faster, something like that. There were real, tangible benefits to collecting. Not here. For example, after you collect 50 alien parts, you get a short cutscene and a stupid little buggy that makes funny noises. After collecting submarine parts, you are rewarded with 10 fucking dollars. $10. Is it funny? Not so much. When a game laughs at you when you put time and effort into something, it's just insulting. It would be fine if it was just one collectible, but all of them give you either no reward or something inconsequential, like a cutscene or a fucking achievement. How frustrating is that? Give players upgrades to their characters, some unique weapons, or at least money. Instead, you create like 10 different types of collectibles, and none of them are worth collecting. None. So not only do you waste our time, you waste your time by creating content that is not fun or enjoyable to do. The sad part is that there is not much else to do in this massive world besides collectibles. There are no real extra activities that add meaning to the game. Sure, there is racing, there are parachute jumps, a few plane stunt missions, and that's it. There is nothing to do. The world is gorgeous and it is massive, and yet it offers nothing outside main story missions. Developing a business would have been nice, like I said, having some permanent wars with other parties or gangs or criminal elements. There are some random events that are not really random. They're actually scripted, but those are just meaningless distractions adding very little to the game. Just some funny dialogue or funny occurrence and stuff like that. It's a very depressing feeling when you finish a GTA 5 game, finish the main story that is, and you see nothing else to do. I mean, starting random rampaging is fun, but after 20th time, it gets quite boring real quickly. Was it really worth creating this world and having so little to do in it? At this point, many people will probably point at multiplayer and call me names, but that's beside the point. Multiplayer makes every game more fun and interesting. What about those of us who don't care about multiplayer? What are we left with when the game ends? Sure, GTA owes me nothing. After all, it delivers a rather enjoyable story with some decent characters. But what did it provide mechanically? Not much. Shooting is still simplistic, so is driving. Economy is in no way complex, and there is nothing to do. So, what's the conclusion? All in all, I did enjoy most of the time with GTA 5. There were quite a few fun and crazy missions that put a smile on my face. Main characters were well written, and watching them grow and develop was emotionally rewarding. Certain story elements were interesting to see unfold. It added quite a few layers to the trio and their unlikely friendship. I just wish that secondary characters had more development and roles to play. Most of them felt like cameos, to be frank. Mechanically, it's a mixed bag. The game really lacked in meaningful content outside main story missions, putting too much effort on collectibles. I mean, when I finished the game, I was only 76% complete. The rest of that, a goddamn quarter of the game, are collectibles. The core mechanics, on the other hand, were as solid as ever. I did have quite a few fun hours in this game. It's not by any means bad, it's just lacking in many important areas. And if fixed, the game would become just marvelous. My name is AJ. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, subscribe, let me know what you thought of it in the comments section, and I will see you guys next time.